saw this morning, I like to walk around, run around, walk around. Hope you all stick around this afternoon and later with Leslie. You can hear me blab on all you want, but to hear straight from the heart of an individual who's gone through this crime, look, that's something that is a rare glimpse into the life of what it means to go through this crime. So I would highly recommend you stick around at 2:30. I will be doing so join me in staying at 2:30 as well. This morning I didn't talk a whole lot about kind of how I got into this space, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and then jump into Free2Work and our engagement with supply chains and all that stuff, because it's incredibly important. But, my walk is probably very similar to yours. At lunch today, I was able to share a little bit about that. And, I met this guy, a crazy guy's name is David Batstone. He wrote this book called Not for Sale. It goes really well underneath those wobbly chairs. If you have a wobbly chair, you stick a book under there, and that way. Thank you. He wouldn't like that joke. No, he would, actually. So I was actually a student of his. So I was sitting in the same seats you were sitting in 12 years ago. And I transferred to the school called University of San Francisco, obviously in San Francisco, and I took this course. It was a social justice course on how do you not just do justice with your heart, your compassion, but also how do you marry that with your mind. And so, my take on that is that he was a positive corrupter or disruptor. We have to think about how do we disrupt the broken systems that exist today. And that isn't just going to be from our heart, from the compassion, it's also going to be from our mind. And so, flash forward, I graduated and we started another venture, a for-profit venture called Right Reality. And then I felt like I had a calling that I needed to go spend time back in South Africa, where I had been in 2002. And, I went and I worked with street children in Durban for nearly a year. I left the day after Christmas 2005. And while I was there, I realized something, that I was getting in the way. What do you mean? See, I didn't have the linguistic skills. I didn't have the tangible skills to work on the streets with the kids. So I said, how do I match my skills with what is needed within the organization? And I think that's something that we have to fight, is that what we really, maybe it's not, I think the draw is towards aftercare. How do I work with survivors? How do I work with children who are in a place of exploitation? We may not be the best people equipped to do that, but we have to equip and empower those who are at that place. So I say that because I was working in South Africa, and a week before David was going to come down from Uganda, where he was writing a chapter of his book, Not for Sale, a week before, this is where the idea of coincidence just got shattered, gone forever. I was walking along the waterfront in Durban. It's the second largest seaport in the southern hemisphere. And it's also not the most nice city. It's kind of dangerous. And this guy put his hand up. I'd never seen him before, so I was a little creeped out. And he said, pointing out to a large tanker ship heading out to sea, he said, I wonder how many people are on that ship enslaved going somewhere where they don't want to go. I thought he was crazy. But guess what? I just didn't have the lens at that point in time to truly understand the exploitation that many of those kids that I was working with on a day-to-day basis, I didn't have the lens to understand what was happening to them. In fact, we would comment, when will that girl disappear? When will that boy disappear? But also the level of sexual exploitation is enormous. Something we talked about readily, but we didn't have a word for it. I think we're going through that point in time where we're building a central kind of lexicon or language that we can move back to. So human trafficking, what does that mean? We think in our mind because it's trafficking that it has to involve movement. Well, no, it doesn't. Actually, I hate that word, or that term, human trafficking. I really do. What we're dealing with is slavery. That's what we're dealing with. Let's name it what it is. Forced labor. So I was living on my friend's floor in Durban, and Dave came, and we started talking about the book, and he said, I'm going to twist your arm. Why don't you move back to the Bay Area, and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll start something around the book. Absolutely. So I twist my arm. I move back to the Bay Area. It's really ugly there, but I'll take it. It's fine. I moved from the floor at my friend's flat in Durban to my friend's couch in Berkeley. So I'm moving up in the world. And now I sleep on airplanes. It's really cool. Now I actually have my own apartment. It's amazing. But I share that because there are things that are right in front of us that we see every single day, and we don't understand what is behind it. You start peeling back the onion on a crime like this, and you start to realize how we're all interconnected in touching slavery today. So this is from the U.S. State Department Trafficking in Persons Report, 2010. It's impossible to get dressed, drive to work, talk on the phone, eat a meal without touching products tainted by forced labor. It's pervasive. But remember, from this morning, this is not about getting beat over the head. This is about the things that we can do about it. But we need to get through some of that hard stuff first. I'd say there is no completely clean, slavery-free supply chain today. None. They are so complex, there's no such thing. Even fair trade, there's been an interesting kind of debate back and forth around a case of potential forced labor that came out, and I highly recommend you read it. It came out December 16th, and I'm going to blank on the name of I think it was in Business Week or Forbes, it was one of those two. And then there's been an exchange since then as to whether this was a fair trade field in West Africa, where there was a potential case of forced child labor. I don't say that to slam fair trade. I think fair trade is the way to go. But I say it to illustrate the fact that there is no slavery-free supply chain. Not today. That is an aspirational goal. That is absolutely where we want to go. Absolutely no doubt that is where we want to go. But to work with major corporations today, I guarantee you, because I've been there, I can't sit across from the CEO of some of the largest technology companies and say, I want you to go tell the world that you're slavery-free, because they'll scoff at you. It's incremental. You have to build a game plan towards that. And that's what Free2Work is about. It's building a game plan with companies and also equipping consumers. So we need to know as consumers about those realities. And that's why I bring up the reality of slavery-free and zero tolerance. So I've actually sat down. One of the crazier moments of the last couple of years has been sitting down with the head lawyer for one of the largest technology firms in the world. And we were talking about a deep engagement on their supply chain. And he's sitting across the table, arms crossed, really angry. I'm kind of freaked out. And he says, so what's this Free2Work all about? And I go, oh boy, how do you explain this? How do you get over this hurdle with the lawyers, right? So I said, it's a lot like a university. A university will never go out and say that we're racism-free, because no one can claim that. No university can claim that they are racism-free. But what we can do is ensure that there's zero tolerance towards racism. So we can ensure that there's policies in place, there are protocols in place, there's transparency about that process, and if something happens, we're going to address it, and we're going to fix it. So literally cut and paste that into a supply chain. And over a process of 1, 2, 15, 25, 30 years, we can work towards a place where it's slavery-free. But you have to start there. So what we need to know is that there's no clean supply chain, but we're working towards it. We're also going to talk about what we can expect from those companies, and then what we can do. So again, this is from the Department of Labor. 128 goods produced in 70 different countries that are touched by forced labor. This is what we know of. So you can see they're agricultural goods, manufactured goods, mined goods. Now, we've had US-based agricultural companies come to us in a panic. This is US-based farming companies saying, we're panicked. Like the tobacco industry. Tobacco industry knows what it's like to be on the wrong side of a social issue. They see the storm clouds on the horizon. They don't want to be tagged as the slavery company again. They don't want to be on the wrong side of it. So they're saying, help us through this process. Let me repeat that again. That was a US-based farming conglomerate, meaning they are worried about forced labor in the US, not anywhere else. But this is from, these facts you see here are from around the world. So now let's talk a little bit about commodities. So commodities are elements that go into products that we use every single day. Has anyone heard of mica? Put your hand up if you've heard of mica. A few of you. You've done your forced labor research. Or you use makeup. I personally don't use makeup. No, really, I don't. No laugh? Oh, come on. Just because, thank you. Even pity laugh, I'll take a pity laugh. I'll totally take a pity laugh. Coltan. Anyone here in this room use coltan? I guarantee you do. Do you have a phone in your pocket? Then you know coltan. Coltan and mica are directly linked to multiple cases of forced labor. Cotton. I'm not even going to ask. Nope. Obviously, we know about cotton. Look, this is to show that within each product that we have and use, this is a reality. Let's dispel any thought that it's not. This is a reality. So supply chains go deep and wide. Obviously, we can think of the actual movement of a product, and we've followed supply chain for the last decade or so, all the way to a point where we've seen the labor situations in manufacturing plants, and we've gone, whew, oh man, the situations in labor in those manufacturing plants in the Pacific Rim are pretty bad. Sweatshops. But how do you think it got so cheaply, all those commodities got sent into that manufacturing plant in the first place? Keep peeling back the onion. Supply chains are incredibly complex. So, as we said, it takes every product we consume today. A lot of those abuses happen as you pull back the onion, even further down the supply chain than the manufacturing level, and they can be incredibly, incredibly complex. So we're going to walk through what we should expect. I want to dive in a little bit to our grading process and how we go about that and why we created things the way we did. This tool was built, I think I mentioned, in partnership with the U.S. State Department and also another labor-based organization in D.C. called the International Labor Rights Forum. And I think this really kind of exemplifies our approach. I wouldn't say that building a technical tool where you're diving deep into a supply chain is a core expertise of not for sale. It's not. Our approach is that we're more grassroots oriented. We can equip consumers with apps and with websites, but what ILRF is great at, what the U.S. State Department is great at, is a great complement to not for sale. And so I would encourage you as you walk forward in your path, if you're working on human rights issues or any kind of issue, how do you find mutually beneficial partnerships and collaborations with experts in the space? Think outside. Sometimes we can get hung up by our own ego. No, I can do it. Let it go. Let it go. Find partners and collaborators who can take the steps that you can't. For example, our job is not to go bust down doors and to pull people out like Krunam did. That's law enforcement's job. So how do we then equip law enforcement with what we call at Not for Sale, smart tip, probable cause? These are the types of things we teach at our academy. So I'd highly recommend you come to our Not for Sale Academy to learn how to create smart tip so that you can actually build probable cause and then work with our team that is former DEA agents and also one of the largest law firms in the world. Come to San Francisco, join us for our academy. Nice little plug there. But it's a great way to gain credibility in the eyes of law enforcement is by working with us and our former law enforcement team. Another academy course is our Free2Work course. So we will actually teach you how to use this tool. It takes 20 hours to grade a company, which doesn't sound like a ton, but it's a lot. 20 hours to just go through the grading process, and then it takes several months to actually engage in a process with that company. Because the last thing we want Free2Work to be is a gotcha. That is not what it's here for. Free2Work is an empowerment tool for us as consumers. It's also an engagement tool for companies. So we've graded 72 brands, and that counts for over 25,000 products. Which sounds like a lot. To be honest, it's not a ton. Think about how many products are just in a local Target store or Walmart. Just so many. So that is one of the hurdles that we have, but that's why we want to equip you if your passion is around supply chain engagement and corporate engagement. Come join us because we want to teach you how to use this tool. It'd be something that we would be very interested in starting maybe if there's professors here on campus who would like to start a team that is doing around supply chain engagement, we would love to do that. We will bring a team out and actually teach the team how to perpetuate and continue to build this data around Free2Work. So another seed planted, I hope. So you can see here we have an overall grade. And for this company, their overall grade is a B, whereas their policies are an A, that they're doing a lot around their policies. You'd be shocked at how many companies have no policy around forced labor or even labor standards at all. Transparency. Now, this is always a tricky one. We've worked quite a bit with Apple, and Apple, up until a couple of months ago, was completely closed off around their supply chain. They wanted nobody to know where they were doing their manufacturing, although everybody in the business knew where they were doing their manufacturing. Everybody did. But they saw it as a competitive advantage. And so that's where you have to walk a fine line with some of the corporations that you're working with. If they view secrecy of where things are being manufactured as a trade secret, that can just be an issue or a hang-up. Monitoring. I have several friends who work very high up in Gap. It turns out, I know Gap has gotten a lot of bad press over the years. Because of that bad press, Gap has done probably more to mitigate risk in their supply chain than most apparel companies, believe it or not. Gap and Nike are doing a lot around mitigating risk to forced labor. It's shocking, I think, to most kind of social justice geeks. It's true. They're doing a lot around forced labor because they want to mitigate risk because they got burned by it, which is why other companies who saw that don't want to fall into that same trap. But what Gap does is they have third-party monitors who just drop in on their manufacturing plants. This happens all the time. And another thing that Gap does is that they don't put more than 50%. This is also kind of a competitive thing, and they don't want to have, if something were to happen in manufacturing plant, they don't put more than 50% of their production in one manufacturing plant, because if something were to happen to that manufacturing plant, then how do they shift production? But guess who fills the other 50%? Other apparel companies. They piggyback Gap's monitoring so they can say they have monitoring. Another way for them to save money. And then worker rights. So worker rights is around the potential of joining a union or starting a union, open association. That's not always a key to mitigating forced labor, but it does hold a key to ensuring that there's proper payment and overtime pay and things like that. So we have 150 points on our assessment. As I mentioned, this takes a while, 20 hours to go through these points of assessment. We just aggregate data that's out there already. So if it's not on their website or if it's not a part of another database, let's say in the US State Department or Department of Labor, and there's no transparency, then we have an issue. So we go through our 150-point assessment, and then we send it to a company. As I mentioned, it's not a gotcha. We send it to them and say, you have 30 days before we post your grade. And of those 72 brands that we've reached out to, 44 of them have gotten back to us. Now that might sound like not that much, but that's incredible. That's an incredible number of companies who go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're an F, we're a D? No way. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've had some chocolate companies, among others, who get A's, who go, we're going to use that in our marketing campaigns. So it's an incredible tool that creates a shift within power of supply chain. Here we have policies at 13% of an overall grade. Transparency is 29%. So an example of a question here would be, as was mentioned in the video, is the supplier country, production disclosure, what manufacturing plants and what countries are you pulling your source materials from? And are you mapping your subcontractors? So this is another major issue within supply chain, is that you might outsource production of your shirts to a factory in India, and then that factory might outsource to 14 other factories. So that becomes an issue. Now, the policies come into play there, because if you have a policy that says, if you do that, you have to make sure that they live by our standards. Now, again, here's another case. Because of the Gap doing the drop-in, they actually found recently, this was just 2 months ago, the Gap found that there was a manufacturing plant that was producing too many shirts for the number of people they had working there. And they were like, how is that happening? Well, they found out they had been outsourcing or subcontracting this t-shirt production to a third party, to another subcontractor that was using forced labor. And you know why we know about it? It's because Gap was transparent about it. Gap said, we found this using our third-party monitoring, and we did this. This was our intervention. We made sure that there was funds paid back to those who were held in forced labor. Many of them were kids, got kids into school. So that's an example of it working well. But transparency is an important part of that. And I could maybe get myself in trouble here a little bit, but this was also recent where it was found out that Apple had forced child labor in one of their supply chains. Again, the reason why we knew about it was because Apple was transparent about it. And it came out in some newspapers. There was particularly op-eds that was blasting Apple for its forced labor and its child labor. I actually have a problem with that as a smart activist, I hope, is that we should be actually saying this is a good thing, one, that they had monitoring, that they had the policies in place, and that they had the transparency about telling us about it. So I know that's a shift in the mind that, wow, we should actually praise a company for finding forced labor. That's weird, right? Very strange. Flips it on the head. But it's key. It's absolutely key to actually pushing companies to actually instill these types of policies and transparency within their supply chain. It's a bit of a flip, isn't it? Kind of strange, but it's important. It's part of what we need as kind of a consumer education to ensure that we know what's happening out there. And then monitoring and training. We talked about this, making sure that there's off-site meetings. So your third-party monitoring doesn't just come in and interview them with the owner standing right there. That's an issue. So there's a couple of organizations that we're working closely with where they're actually allowing people, they have an anonymous tip line that you can actually text or SMS. So if you're a worker, they just post up the anonymous kind of tip line up on the wall, and you can actually text in and say, I'm not being paid overtime, or I was held this weekend and I couldn't leave the manufacturing plant and I was forced to work. So those types of kind of innovative things. Everybody in the world has a cell phone, a mobile phone. So if you can create a direct line, a free SMS text line to get out, not everybody, most people, a lot of people, you'd be shocked, have cell phones. It's an important kind of lifeline, if you will, out to monitoring organizations. And then worker rights, living wage, right to gather. And then we've talked about this. Throw away your Nokia. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's good news. I have to get rid of that joke because Nokia reached out to us and said, we would actually like to work with you. That's a great thing. So if you have your Nokia, hold it up with pride. Nokia is the most, there are more Nokia phones in the world than any other phone. A lot of those brick phones, the small brick phones, particularly on the continent of Africa. And what we're looking to do is work with a couple of organizations and building a way that kids can actually get airtime, because it's a kind of pay-as-you-go system, to actually play a game about forced labor, human trafficking. So they would literally download a free app on their Nokia phone and be able to go through and answer questions. Did anyone ever come and ask you to work in their factory? Yes or no? Did you ever take a job like that? Yes or no? What were the conditions like? So now we're gathering information and data from regions of the world that are incredibly difficult to get access to. And that creates a database that we can then apply our activism in a more honed and focused way. And on the positive side, because of the Nokia phone, those young adults and kids and others get free airtime on their phones. Again, it's thinking outside the box. How do we use those existing tools? Now, we've gotten ripped for saying, download an iPhone app. Because people say, there's forced labor in the supply chain of Apple, and there's really bad labor practice with Apple. Is the iPhone going to go away? No. Is the Android going to go away? No. What that does is it provides us leverage, and this is an incredibly important word, leverage, to go to those companies and engage them and say, look, a lot of people are using your phone, but the storm clouds are on the horizon. Because I personally think, I really believe this, that in 15 years, right now we have really kind of, there's supposedly a triple bottom line, the triple P. Profit, people, and planet. That's supposedly the triple bottom line for a business today. I think it's more like this. It's profit and image. And image kind of means environment, particularly in the United States. I'm not smashing that. I think that's important. We need people, or we need profit to drive our economy. And we also need planet to ensure that products are made in a sustainable manner. But sustainability includes people. Earlier this morning, you saw that we work in the Peruvian Amazon. we've engaged 77 Amazonian tribes. Sometimes I'm like, my head hurts thinking about who we actually collaborate and work with. Yes, we have a partnership with 77 Amazonian tribes representing 150,000 people. And the reason why we're working in the Amazon was because our project, which is that compassion-based project based in Lima, pulling kids off the streets who have been trafficked from the Amazon. So we're literally thinking, okay, how do we move upstream? If we're talking about pulling kids out at the bottom, which was in Lima and other major cities, we can't stop there. We have to start moving upstream, which is literally to the headwaters of the Amazon, to figure out why are so many native kids being trafficked from the Amazon to Lima. What we found out was that there's a lack of jobs. So how do we use that as a way to ensure that kids are not vulnerable in the first place? Economic vulnerability. So we moved upstream and we started working with the Amazonian tribes. And we said, how can we help you? And they said, well, there's a number of products that we have here, but the supply chain to get it out of here is corrupt. So I can pick all the Brazil nuts I can possibly pick, but I'm only going to get $1 for every bag. And you know how much they are sold here? $50. So they're getting $1 out of a $50 product. So how do we begin to fix those broken supply chains? Now I bring this up, the Amazon up, because of the environmental piece. I won't name names, but there are some major environmental organizations that those 77 Amazonian tribes refuse to work with. Right now there are some, they call them environmental raiders. They're going around to Amazonian tribes saying, sign a contract with us because it's really lucrative because of something called RED. RED ensures carbon offset. So this is a big thing coming up. That me as a major corporation or a company, I can offset my carbon by buying and helping maintain parts of Peruvian Amazon. Well, guess what happens to many, many of these tribes? They sign a contract, and then they get kicked off the land. Now they're becoming vulnerable. And you see spikes of trafficking in regions that this has happened. So our approach is, well, how do we sustain the land by equipping the native people to be the stewards of the land? Novel concept. Or maybe not. I always think back, it's like in kindergarten or in first grade when you create those little ecosystems and you put ants in them and you kind of look in. Well, what's missing? It's the people. People live there. We're a part of the ecosystem. So how do we equip us, people, to be the stewards of the land? And so by taking a person or a people-focused approach to sustainability, we're actually creating systems that are healthy and creating new jobs in the Amazon. So the environmental movement today is a big one. It's huge. We're talking about profit for companies, and we're talking about planet, the environment. I truly believe that the abolitionist movement, because of people like you, in 15 years, will be on the same level as the environmental movement is today. I have no doubt about that. Think about what that means. How often do you turn on the television and you hear about the environment? It's a lot. How often do you pick up a newspaper and you see something about the environment? It's a lot. So imagine if 15 years you turn on the television and you're hearing about, on the business report, you're hearing about profit, planet, and people. Let that sink in. I really believe that is the future. 15 years, it's not very far away. Why is that the case? It's because as we start to purchase differently, using Free2Work, using other tools, buying fair trade. By the way, fair trade gets great scores on our Free2Work app. Not because they're slavery-free, we hope they are, but because they have zero tolerance towards forced labor. So make use of these tools. Get them out there. Tell people about these tools.
Free2Work provides consumers with information on forced and child labor through related news articles, informative factoids, and graded evaluations of brands' efforts to address forced and child labor within their supply chains. To access this information, you can browse our list of brands or scan a product's barcode. For best results, focus on industries we have featured. These are the industries for which we have done the most research and have the most information. We have evaluated over 20,000 products, but our research still has a long way to go. Our extensive grading process takes up to 3 months for a single brand. The app, then, is not simply a resource for consumers, but a way for you to further our research. Often, multiple products will share the same barcode number. If you scan a barcode and receive more than one match, select the appropriate product and product type from the list. We store data from every scan, so your selection improves the accuracy of future product matches. For products we have not yet evaluated, we provide you with what we know about the industry, including factoids, industry news, and evaluations of similar brands. At the same time, you can send us information such as where the product was produced, what materials are in the product, and whether the brand is part of a certification program, such as Fair Trade. This data helps our researchers conduct their evaluations. Together, we can tell the stories behind the products we purchase every day.
So Reid Hoffman, he's the one who started LinkedIn. If you're familiar with LinkedIn, if you're graduating soon, you should get to know LinkedIn. Reid Hoffman said, if you launch a product, particularly he's talking about online, he said if you launch a product and you're not embarrassed by it, you launched too late. You launched too late. And I'll be honest, there are a number of things that we got out ahead of the curve, not for sale, put it out there, and man, it's embarrassing. It really is. There are things that are just like, oh, today at lunch, we were attempting to download the app. There were issues with it. We found it, but there were issues downloading. Now, that shouldn't be a problem, but it is what it is. But scanning sometimes doesn't return a product. And so we're building feedback loops. This is an important piece, I think, of anything and everything you do. How do you build in feedback loops so that you get better and better and better at justice? I know, again, let's go back to ego. I don't want to know when I'm not doing it right. I don't want to know when it's not perfect. That's when you become better and better at what you do. Is by being open to the feedback and the feedback loops that people provide you. And so that's what Free2Work app has a key component of it. It's not just about equipping you as a consumer, but it's also about creating an entire team that's out there scanning and saying, here, I'll give you more information. Product was made in China. They are part of they're a part of Fair Trade. That type of ecosystem of advocates is incredibly, incredibly important for us to make sure that the tool is honed and made better and better. Now, we talked about this morning that, all of us buy things. We all do. Sorry. Like I said, you're buying your education right now. Whether or not now, it might be in a few years. You can be paying it back. I still am. A just world is where your purchase is your advocacy. Where you just walk into a store and you buy something, and that is your vote. You're either voting for good, or you're voting for a company that doesn't care about mitigating their risk or exposure to forced labor. It's a vote. Every time you buy something is a vote. This is another one that's got to sink in. It is incredibly important. Every 4 years, every 2 years, we get to vote for our leaders. But every single day, you vote by what you purchase. It is probably the most important choice you make every single day. Again, we just don't know it. And we're starting to wake up to that reality. But if I were just up here saying, just buy fair trade or just buy organic, whatever, and not give you a tool that you could be a part of, then I feel like I'm just coming and saying, here's this horrible thing, and I'm going to leave. I think that happens way too often. We blast people, and then we just leave. That's why Free2Work is so important, to create this ecosystem of consumers like you who are providing the feedback. It's an incredibly important element of it. How many people here buy T-shirts on campus? I bet many of you have, yeah, there we go. Whoop, whoop. If you have let's say, an intramural team, do you get T-shirts for your intramural team? Where do you buy them? Do you just go down to get the cheapest one you can get? Probably, right? We just get the cheapest thing we can. Well, why don't you pressure administration to start buying in bulk from Not For Sale? We are empowering vulnerable and survivors of trafficking in El Salvador and in India. See, it's about shifting our approach. This is something that we can do on every university campus. You should be able to drill down and purchase differently. Do you have fair trade coffee available? Do you have fair trade chocolate available? Your T-shirts? We're going to have a special line of Krunam rings. This is mine. I bought it from her in November. Krunam, the woman who helps launch Not For Sale, she's the artist. How do we start purchasing differently? It's a vote. That said, we're working with E-Nation. E-Nation is a band. The lead singer is on this TV show called General Hospital. Maybe there's a couple of fans out there. General Hospital. I watch it religiously every single day. No, I'm just kidding. The lead singer is on General Hospital, and E-Nation has said, we want to be free to rock. We want to make sure that our apparel is made to actually enhance the dignity of those in our supply chain, not to continue to perpetuate rivers of misery. So Free to Rock, if you go to free2rock.org, get yourself a T-shirt. It's Rebel Against Injustice T-shirt. This is what we're doing every single month. I think next month is with this little band called Third Day. Yeah, I think you're going to get that T-shirt. Last month was with 10th Avenue North, another little band. So we're starting to work and collaborate with some great partners within the sphere of art and music to ensure that we're unlocking different avenues and approach. So that's a great example of a band saying we're going to stand behind this as well. Plain White Tees. Ever heard of the Plain White Tees? Hey there, Delilah. That wasn't too bad, was it? Pity laugh. So Plain White Tees are also going to be doing it. How do you take your existing stream and put justice in it? How do we, as students, ensure that we are moving forward as abolitionists? This is incredibly important. I want to leave you with one last bit of information. You're like, thank you. Get off the stage. This is going to sound strange coming from a nonprofit. You know how we're going to win? You know how we're going to end slavery today? Is through ruthless execution. Ruthless execution. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to push people out of the way to get where I need to go. Ruthless execution means we have a goal. And our goal is to end slavery in our lifetime. That's our goal. How do we create the systems that allow us to do that? It's not going to take the old charity mindset. It's going to take ruthless execution. It means voting with your dollars differently. It also means taking your education and taking it to another level. It's one thing to get educated, it's another thing to have a purpose and a passion behind it. That's why I wake up way too early and I go to sleep way too late, but I love it. I love it. I love it because I have a purpose and a passion behind all that I do. And I'm lucky enough to also make a profit. Yes, nonprofit doesn't mean you don't get paid. I get paid. But together as a movement, we must ruthlessly execute to see the end of slavery. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. Stay in your seats. Stay in your seats because Leslie's going to come up. We're going to do like a 2-minute layover and then, stand and sit. Stand and sit at 2:30, at 2:30, at 2:30. Thanks, everyone.